The Great Hall of the Starward Unity was filled with creatures from 100 different worlds. Some had scales that shone like polished metal. Others had 4 arms or 6 legs or bodies made of living crystal. They stood in groups, speaking in languages that clicked and hummed and sang. Above them, the ceiling showed the stars themselves, spinning slowly in the darkness of space. In the middle of this grand assembly stood 3 humans. They looked very small. Captain Jiho kept his back straight and his face calm. He had trained for this moment for years. Earth had only joined the Galactic Coalition 6 months ago, and this was their first major diplomatic meeting. Everything depended on making a good impression. Beside him stood Dr. Hana, the ship's medical officer. She was studying the aliens around them with bright, curious eyes. She found everything fascinating, even when those same aliens looked at her like she was an insect. And behind them both, silent as a shadow, stood Sergeant Teeman. Teeman was not a diplomat. He was not a scientist. He was a soldier, and he had been assigned to protect the delegation. He wore a simple gray uniform with no medals or decorations. His hands hung loose at his sides. His dark eyes moved slowly across the room, watching everything, seeing everything. Most of the aliens ignored him completely. The Taurani were the most powerful species in the coalition. They stood nearly 3 meters tall, with thick blue skin and muscles that could crush stone. Their leader, Commander Velix, walked through the crowd like he owned the universe. In many ways, he did. Velix stopped in front of the human delegation. He looked down at them with 4 yellow eyes, and his wide mouth curved into something that might have been a smile. "So these are the famous humans," he said. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "The newest members of our great coalition." Jiho bowed his head politely. "Commander Velix, it is an honor to meet you. Earth is grateful for the opportunity to join the galactic community." Velix made a sound that was almost a laugh. "Grateful? Yes, I imagine you are." He leaned closer, and Jiho could smell something like copper on his breath. "Tell me, Captain, what exactly do humans offer the Coalition? You have no special technology. Your bodies are soft and weak. You live for less than 100 years. You break so easily." The aliens around them grew quiet. They were listening now. Jiho kept his voice steady. "We are adaptable, Commander. We learn quickly. We work hard. We believe we can contribute to—" "Contribute?" Velix interrupted. His laugh was louder this time. "Little human, do you know how the Coalition ranks its species? By strength, by power, by value." He held up one massive hand and spread his fingers. "There are 7 classes. The Taurani are Class 1. We have held that position for 3,000 years. Do you know what class your species has been assigned?" Jiho said nothing. "Class 7, Velix said. "The lowest. You are ranked below the Kessi, who cannot even fight. You are ranked below species that we use as servants. You are, quite simply, the weakest beings in this coalition." Dr. Hana stepped forward. "With respect, Commander, strength is not the only measure of—" "Silence." Velix did not even look at her. "I did not ask the female to speak." Hana's face went red, but Jiho put a hand on her arm. "Not now," his touch said. "Not here." Behind them, Teeman had not moved. He had not spoken. He simply stood there, watching Velix with those dark, quiet eyes. Officer Wren, a Kessi diplomat with pale gray skin and large black eyes, noticed the human soldier. The Kessi were a small species, considered weak by coalition standards. They survived through intelligence and careful observation, and Wren was very good at observing. There was something strange about this human, Wren thought. The other 2 were nervous. That was normal. Any creature would be nervous facing Velix. But this one, the soldier, was completely still, not frozen with fear, just still, waiting. Wren had seen predators wait like that before. Velix was still talking, still enjoying himself. "I have studied your species, humans. You come from a small, wet planet where you spent thousands of years fighting each other. You have barely left your own solar system. You are children playing in a universe of adults, and you expect us to treat you as equals. We expect nothing, Jiho said quietly. We only ask for a fair chance to prove ourselves. Velix opened his mouth to respond, but a sudden sound cut through the great hall. It was a sharp, high alarm that made the crystal beings chime and the scaled creatures hiss. Red lights began flashing along the walls. A voice spoke in every language at once, coming from speakers hidden throughout the ship. Warning! Hull breach detected in sectors 7 through 12. Hostile forces boarding. All personnel to battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. The Great Hall erupted into chaos. Aliens ran in every direction. Some were screaming. Others were trying to reach the exits. The Torani soldiers pulled out weapons and began shouting orders that nobody followed. Jiho grabbed Hana's arm. Stay close to me. What's happening? She asked. Ren appeared beside them, moving faster than expected for such a small creature. The Drevik, the Kessie said. The Drevik swarm, they have found us. Who are the Drevik? Jiho demanded. Hunters, Ren said. The alien's voice was shaking. They do not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They kill everything in their path. They are the reason many species no longer exist. Through the chaos, Teeman finally spoke. His voice was calm and low. How many? Ren looked at him with wide black eyes. I do not know, dozens, hundreds, it does not matter. The Drevik are monsters, they cannot be stopped. Another explosion shook the ship. The lights flickered. In the distance, there were sounds of gunfire and screaming. Velix was shouting at his soldiers, trying to organize a defense, but even the mighty Torani looked afraid. Ren was right. Everyone knew the stories about the Drevik. They came from nowhere, destroyed everything, and disappeared back into the dark. Teeman looked at Jiho. There was no fear in his eyes. There was something else there, something that made even the veteran captain feel a small chill run down his spine. Orders, Captain? Teeman asked. Jiho swallowed. For now, stay alive, protect the delegation, and hope the coalition soldiers can handle this. Teeman nodded slowly, but his eyes had already moved past Jiho, past the screaming crowd, toward the dark corridors where the enemy was coming from. He was not hopping for anything. He was planning. The cargo bay was a place of death. Teeman stood at the edge of the upper platform, looking down at the destruction below. Crates had been torn open like paper. Bodies lay scattered across the metal floor. Some wore the silver armor of coalition soldiers. Others were twisted, alien shapes with too many legs and blades where hands should be. The Drevik. He had seen pictures in the briefing files, but pictures did not capture the horror of them. They were like insects, but wrong. Each one was the size of a large man, covered in black armor that looked like it had grown from their own bodies. Their faces had no eyes that he could see, only rows of sharp teeth and two long antennae that twitched constantly, sensing the air. Their arms ended in curved blades as long as swords. And they moved fast, so fast. Teeman watched as 3 coalition soldiers tried to hold a doorway. They were Torani, big and strong, firing energy weapons that lit up the dark bay with blue flashes. But the Drevik did not stop. They ran through the fire, losing 1, 2, 3 of their own, and then they were on the soldiers. The screaming lasted only a few seconds. We need to go, Jiho said from behind him. The upper decks are being sealed. If we don't move now, we'll be trapped down here. Teeman did not turn around. Where is Dr. Hana? She went to the medical bay. They were wounded. Jiho's voice was tight with worry. I told her to stay with us. She didn't listen. Medical bay is on deck 4, Teeman said. That's 3 levels below us. I know, Jiho grabbed his arm. There's nothing we can do. The Drevik are everywhere. The coalition forces are retreating to the bridge. We have to go with them. Through the ship's communication system, Commander Velix's voice boomed. He was ordering a full retreat. All personnel were to fall back to the upper decks. The lower sections would be sealed and vented into space. He's going to sacrifice everyone down there, Ren said. The Kessi had followed them, staying close to the humans. He will kill the Drevik by opening the ship to vacuum, but anyone still below Deck 6 will die with them. How long before they seal the doors? Teeman asked. 20 minutes, maybe less. Teeman finally turned. He looked at Jiho with those dark, calm eyes. Captain, Dr. Hana is still down there. There are probably other survivors too. Jiho's face was pale. Teeman, I can't order you to. I'm not asking for orders. For a long moment, the two men looked at each other. Around them, aliens ran past, fleeing toward the upper decks. The sound of gunfire and screaming echoed from below. The ship shook as another explosion hit somewhere in the distance. Jiho closed his eyes. When he opened them again, there was pain there, but also something like respect. Do what you have to do, Sergeant. Teeman nodded once. Then he looked around the cargo bay. Most of the weapons had been taken by soldiers or destroyed in the fighting. But there, near a broken crate, he saw a metal pipe about half a meter long. Near it was a utility blade, the kind workers used to cut cables. Small but sharp. He picked them both up. Ren made a strange sound like a bird chirping in confusion. You are going down there, with those. Yes. But you will die. The Drevik cannot be fought with primitive weapons. They are too fast, too strong. Even our best soldiers fall before them. Teeman looked at the small gray alien. There was no anger in his face, no fear, no pride. Just a quiet certainty that made Ren step back. I've heard that before, Teeman said. About other enemies, they're all dead now. Then he turned and walked toward the stairs that led down into the darkness. The lower decks were hell. The lights had failed in most sections, leaving only the red emergency glow that painted everything in blood colors. Smoke filled the air, making it hard to breathe. Teeman pulled his shirt over his mouth and nose and kept moving. He could hear them. The Drevik made a clicking sound when they moved, like thousands of tiny bones rattling together. It came from everywhere, bouncing off the metal walls, making it impossible to tell where they really were. Good. If he couldn't find them, they couldn't find him. Teeman moved through the corridor in a low crouch. His boots made no sound on the metal floor. He had trained for this years ago in the mountains of his home country. Silent movement, patience, hunting. The first Drevik he encountered was alone, standing over a body. It was feeding. Teeman did not hesitate. He came out of the shadows like a ghost. The metal pipe caught the creature at the base of its skull with all his strength behind it. There was a crack like breaking wood, and the Drevik fell. It twitched once, twice, then it was still. Teeman stood there, breathing hard, looking down at the monster he had killed. His heart was pounding. His hands were shaking, but he did not stop. He took one of the creature's blade arms. It had broken off in the fall. Now he had a better weapon. 2 levels down, 1 more to go. The sounds of fighting grew louder as he descended. There were survivors somewhere ahead still resisting. He moved faster now, sacrificing some silence for speed. Time was running out. He found a group of Drevik at a junction, 4 of them, gathered around a sealed door. They were trying to cut through it. On the other side, Teeman could hear voices. Alien voices, but also a human one. Hana. She was alive. Teeman looked at the 4 monsters. They were bigger than him, faster than him. They had natural weapons that could cut through metal. He had a pipe, a utility knife, and a broken alien blade. He smiled. Not a happy smile, not a kind smile. It was the smile of a wolf that had finally found its prey. He moved. The first Drevik never saw him coming. The blade went through its neck before it could turn. The second spun toward him, slashing with both arms, but Teeman was already ducking, rolling, coming up inside its guard. The pipe crushed its knee, and as it fell, the knife found the soft place under its jaw. 2 down, 2 left. The remaining Drevik were faster now, alert, working together. They came at him from both sides. One caught his arm with a glancing blow, opening a long gash that immediately began to bleed. Timon ignored it. Pain was just information. His body was telling him he was hurt. He already knew. He used the pipe to block a killing strike, then spun and kicked one Drevik into the other. For just a moment, they tangled together. That was all he needed. The broken blade went through one. His knife went through the other. Silence. Timon stood in the corridor, surrounded by dead monsters, covered in blood both red and black. His breath came in harsh gasps. His wounded arm burned like fire, but he was still standing. He walked to the sealed door and knocked 3 times, slowly. "Dr. Hana," he said. "It's Timon, open the door." There was a pause, then the door slid open. Hana stood there, her medical uniform splattered with blood, her eyes wide with disbelief. Behind her, Timon could see other survivors. Aliens of different species, huddled together, staring at him like he was a ghost. "Timon," Hana breathed, "how did you?" "No time," he said. "They're sealing the ship, we need to move." He looked at the survivors. There were about a dozen of them. None were soldiers. They were scientists, diplomats, workers. They were terrified. "Stay behind me," Timon told them. "Do exactly what I say. Don't make noise. Don't run unless I tell you to run." One of the aliens, a tall creature with silver feathers, spoke in a trembling voice. "You are one human. There are hundreds of Drevik between us and safety. How can you possibly protect us?" Timon picked up his weapons. His eyes had that look again, the one that Ren had noticed, the look of a predator. "By making them afraid to follow us," he said. Then he turned and walked into the darkness. And the hunt truly began. The Drevik had a word for darkness. In their clicking language, it meant safety. It meant home. For millions of years, they had hunted in the black spaces between stars, creatures of shadow and silence. Nothing could see them. Nothing could escape them. They were the ultimate predators. Until today. The scout moved through the corridor on 6 legs, its antennae twitching as it searched for prey. It could smell blood somewhere ahead. Human blood, the weak species, easy meat. It found the blood on the floor, a small puddle leading into a side passage. The scout clicked with pleasure and followed the trail. Its brothers would eat well tonight. The trail led into a storage room filled with metal containers. The scout paused, antennae waving. Something was wrong. The blood trail ended here, but there was no prey. No body, nothing. Then it heard a sound behind it. The door had closed. The scout spun, raising its blade arms, searching for the threat. The room was dark, but darkness was home. It could sense movement, hear breathing, feel the tiny vibrations of. The first blow came from above. Timon dropped from the top of a container, landing on the creature's back. Before it could react, he drove his blade through the gap between its head and body. The Drevik thrashed, throwing him off, but it was already dying. It crashed against the wall and lay still. Timon rose slowly. His wounded arm was wrapped in cloth now, torn from his own shirt. The bleeding had slowed but not stopped. He ignored it. He looked at the dead scout and began his work. On the bridge of the starward Unity, Officer Ren watched the sensor displays with growing confusion. The Drevik had spread through the lower decks like a disease. There were over 300 of them, according to the ship's internal sensors. The coalition forces had retreated to the upper sections and sealed the doors. In 12 minutes, Commander Velix would open the lower decks to space and kill everything below. But something strange was happening. The Drevik were not moving forward anymore. In Sector 7, a group of 12 had stopped advancing. In Sector 9, another group was actually retreating. And throughout the lower decks, the Drevik communication signals were becoming chaotic, confused, even fearful. "What are they doing?" Ren muttered. Captain Jiho stood nearby, watching the same displays. He had refused to leave the bridge, refused to stop monitoring the situation. "Where is Teeman?" he asked. "Can you track human life signs?" Ren adjusted the sensors. "There, Deck 4, Section 12, he is still alive." The Kessie paused, studying the data more carefully. "That is strange." "What?" "His biosigns. His heart rate is elevated, nearly twice normal resting rate. His adrenaline levels are extremely high. His body temperature is rising." Ren looked at the display with wide black eyes. "By all measures, his body is in extreme distress. Any of my species would be paralyzed by such a state, but he is still moving. He is moving very fast." Jiho almost smiled. "That's not distress, that's combat mode." "Combat mode." "Humans evolved as persistence hunters," Jiho explained. "We don't win fights by being stronger or faster. We win by not stopping. Our bodies pump chemicals that block pain, sharpen focus, and push past physical limits. Fear doesn't paralyze us. It fuels us." Ren stared at him. "That is terrifying." "Yes," Jiho said quietly, "it is." Deep in the lower decks, the hunters were becoming the hunted. A group of 5 Drevik moved through Corridor 7, searching for the survivors they knew were hiding somewhere below. Their leader, a large warrior with scars across its armor, clicked orders to the others. "Spread out. Search every room. Kill everything." They found a doorway ahead, partially open. The scarred leader gestured for the others to circle around. Standard hunting formation. Surround the prey. Leave no escape. But when they pushed through the door, they found only an empty room. No prey, nothing. Then one of them looked up. Written on the ceiling in black Drevik blood were words in the Coalition common language. The Drevik could not read it, but they knew what blood looked like. They knew what their own dead smelled like. One of the young warriors made a sound of confusion. The scarred leader silenced it with a sharp click. They needed to leave. Something was wrong here. Something was. The lights went out. In the darkness, something moved, fast, silent, wrong. When the lights flickered back on, 2 of the Drevik were on the ground, dead. The other 3 spun in circles, blades raised, antennae searching desperately for any sign of the attacker. Nothing. The scarred leader made a sound the Drevik rarely made. It was a warning cry, passed down from ancient times, from when they were not the hunters but the hunted. It meant predator. Teeman crouched in a ventilation shaft above, watching the 3 remaining Drevik through a metal grate. His body screamed with pain. His wounded arm was getting worse. He had taken a cut across his ribs that he had not told the survivors about. His muscles burned from exertion. None of it mattered. He could feel the adrenaline singing in his blood, feel the ancient instincts of his ancestors taking over. Humans had once chased prey across endless grasslands, following them for days until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. They had survived ice ages and predators and each other. Compared to that, these bugs were nothing. He dropped from the shaft. On the bridge, Commander Velix watched the same sensor displays, but he was not confused. He was angry. "What is happening down there?" he demanded. "Why are the Drevik stopping?" An officer at a nearby console looked up nervously. "Sir, the Drevik are reporting losses. Significant losses. Something is hunting them." "Hunting them? That is impossible. There are no coalition forces left in the lower decks." "It is not coalition forces, Commander," the officer swallowed. "The signals indicate a single attacker, small, fast, using guerrilla tactics and the ship's own systems against them." Velix stared at the display. A single attacker in the middle of a Drevik swarm. That was suicide. That was impossible. That was. "The human," Ren said quietly. "The soldier." Velix turned to look at the small gray Kessie. "What?" "His name is Teeman. He went into the lower decks to rescue survivors." Ren pointed at the sensor display. "He has been down there for 11 minutes. In that time, the Drevik have lost 47 warriors. 47 of their fighters killed by one human with no energy weapons, no armor, no support. Velix opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He looked at Jiho, who stood nearby with his arms crossed. "Your soldier," Velix finally said. "What is he?" Jiho met his eyes calmly. "He's a human, just a human." "That is not. Humans are class 7, the weakest species. They cannot." "You measured us wrong, Commander." Jiho's voice was quiet but hard. "You measured strength and speed and technology. You forgot to measure will." On the lower decks, Teeman continued to hunt. He moved through the ship like a ghost, appearing from shadows, striking from unexpected angles, and vanishing before the Drevik could respond. He used the ship's maintenance tunnels to travel unseen. He used emergency systems to create distractions, sealing doors to trap groups, venting steam to create cover, cutting power to plunge sections into darkness. The Drevik had never faced anything like this. They were used to being feared. They were used to prey that ran or froze or begged. This human did none of those things. He just kept coming. A Drevik warrior found one of its dead brothers hanging from a pipe in Corridor 12. The body had been arranged to look like it was reaching out, as if begging for help. A message. Another group found strange markings on the walls, drawn in Drevik blood. They did not understand the human words, but they understood the meaning. "I am still here." The survivors moved behind Teeman, protected by his violence. Dr. Hana watched him with a mixture of horror and awe. She was a doctor. She had sworn to heal, to protect life. But watching Teeman work, she understood something about her species that she had never truly grasped before. Humans were gentle creatures most of the time. They loved art and music and beauty. They cried at sad stories and laughed at silly jokes. But when the people they loved were in danger, they became something else entirely. They became monsters. And in the darkness of the Starward Unity, surrounded by alien killers, one human monster was just getting started. The medical bay was a small room filled with machines that hummed and blinked with soft lights. Dr. Hana worked quickly, her hands steady despite the chaos around them. The survivors huddled in corners, aliens of every shape and size, watching her with a mixture of hope and fear. Teeman sat on a metal table, stripped to the waist. The wounds on his body told a story of violence. The gash on his arm had been joined by others. A deep cut across his ribs, burns on his shoulder from an energy weapon that had grazed him, bruises that covered his skin like dark purple flowers. "Hold still," Hana said as she pressed a medical device against his arm. It sealed the wound with a soft hiss, but the pain made his jaw tighten. "You've lost a lot of blood. You need to rest." "No time." Teeman's voice was hoarse. He had been breathing smoke and fighting for nearly 20 minutes. "How many survivors?" 15, including you and me." "The ceiling, how long?" Hana glanced at a display on the wall. 8 minutes. We need to reach Deck 6 before then, or—" She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. One of the aliens approached them slowly. It was a tall creature with 4 thin arms and skin that looked like blue glass. Teeman remembered seeing it at the diplomatic assembly. A scientist of some kind. "You are injured," the alien said. Its voice was high and musical. "How are you still moving?" Teeman looked at it. "Because I have to." "That is not an answer. I have studied many species. When a body is damaged, it stops functioning. Pain signals tell the brain to protect itself. This is basic biology. You should not be able to stand, let alone fight." Dr. Hana finished sealing Teeman's wounds and stepped back. She looked at the alien with tired eyes. "You're thinking about it wrong. For most species, pain is a command. Stop moving, protect yourself, hide." "Yes, that is how survival works." "Not for humans." Hana pulled a small screen from her pocket and activated it. A diagram of a human body appeared, with lines showing the nervous system and brain. "Our ancestors lived on a planet filled with predators. Lions, wolves, bears. animals much faster and stronger than us. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor. By your logic, we should have gone extinct millions of years ago." The blue alien leaned closer, curious despite its fear. "Then how did you survive?" "We became persistence predators." Hana pointed at the diagram. "See this gland? It produces adrenaline. When we're in danger, it floods our system with chemicals that do something no other species has. It turns fear into fuel. Our hearts beat faster. Our muscles get stronger. Our minds focus on one thing: survival. But the pain. Pain becomes information, nothing more. Our brains can choose to ignore it, at least temporarily. We can keep running, keep fighting, keep moving long after our bodies should have stopped." Hana looked at Timan with something like sadness. "We pay for it later. The body remembers every injury, every moment of overexertion. But in the moment, we become something else." Timan stood up from the table. His body screamed at him to stop, to rest, to heal. He ignored it. He had been ignoring his body for 20 minutes. He could ignore it for 20 more. "We need to move," he said. The survivors gathered behind him. 15 beings from 7 different species, all looking to one wounded human for protection. It should have been absurd. It should have been impossible. But they had seen what he could do. Timan opened the medical bay door and looked out into the corridor. The emergency lights still painted everything red. The smoke had grown thicker. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear the clicking of Drevik moving through the ship. "Stay close," he said. "Stay quiet. If I tell you to run, you run. Don't look back. Don't stop for anyone." He stepped into the corridor and began to move. On the bridge, Officer Wren was speaking rapidly into a communication device. "Yes, I am certain. There are survivors in the lower decks. 15 life signs moving toward Deck 6. They are being led by the human soldier." Wren paused, listening. "No, I do not understand how either, but the sensor data is clear." Commander Velik stood nearby, his 4 yellow eyes fixed on the main display. The Drevik were in chaos. Their organized assault had fallen apart. Groups wandered aimlessly, some still hunting, others seeming to retreat. The swarm's collective mind, which usually moved with perfect unity, was fractured. "Delay the sealing," Velik said suddenly. Everyone on the bridge turned to look at him. "Commander," an officer asked, "but the protocol." "I said delay it." Velik's voice was hard, but there was something else in it now, something that might have been respect. "Give them 10 more minutes." Jiho stepped forward. "Commander, I—" "Do not thank me, human." Velik did not look at him. "I am not doing this for you. I am doing this because I want to see, I want to understand." He finally turned to face Jiho, and his expression was troubled. "Your soldier is one being, wounded, alone against hundreds of Drevik, and he is winning. How is this possible?" Jiho thought for a moment. "Do you know how we got here, Commander? Humans, I mean. How we went from primitive animals to a species that travels between stars. Technology, tools, civilization. Those came later. First, we survived." Jiho walked to the main display and looked at the tiny dot that represented Timan's life sign, still moving through the hostile decks. "On our planet, we were not the strongest or the fastest, but we could do something no other animal could. We could keep going." "Explain." "We hunted by following. We would find an animal and chase it. Not fast, just steady. The animal would run away, but we would follow. It would rest, we would catch up. It would run again, we would follow again. Hours, days, however long it took. Eventually, the animal would collapse from exhaustion and we would be there." Wren made a soft sound of disbelief. "You wore them down." "Yes, and we never stopped doing it." Jiho looked at Velik. "That is what your soldier is seeing down there. That is what the Drevik are experiencing. A creature that will not stop, cannot be scared away, and does not know how to give up. They don't know how to fight something like that. They've never had to." Velik was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet. "We ranked you as Class 7, the weakest species." "I know." We were wrong. In the lower decks, Teeman and the survivors had reached a stairwell that led up to Deck 6. Safety was just 2 levels above them, but between them and the stairs stood a wall of Drevik. 20 of them, maybe more. They had gathered here, forming a final line, blocking the escape route. Their clicking filled the air and their blades gleamed in the red light. Teeman stopped. The survivors huddled behind him, their hope beginning to fade. There were too many. Even for him, there were too many. One of the Drevik stepped forward. It was larger than the others, covered in scars, clearly a leader of some kind. It made a series of clicks that Teeman could not understand. But he understood the meaning. This is the end. You cannot pass. You will die here. Teeman looked at the monster. His body was broken. His strength was fading. He had nothing left. No, that was not true. He had one thing left. He took a step forward. The survivors behind him gasped. Dr. Hana called his name, but Teeman did not stop. He walked toward the wall of Drevik, toward the scarred leader, toward certain death. And as he walked, he spoke, not to the survivors, not to the Drevik. To himself. I am Teeman. I am a soldier. I am a human. I do not stop. I do not surrender. I do not die until my people are safe. The Drevik leader watched him approach. It had killed hundreds of beings. It had never seen one walk toward death willingly. Teeman raised his blade. Come on then. And behind him, Dr. Hana understood something. Teeman was not trying to win this fight. He was trying to buy time, to be a distraction, to let the others escape while the Drevik focused on him. He was sacrificing himself. No, she whispered. No, not like this. But before the Drevik could attack, before Teeman could make his final stand, a sound came from above. A sound like thunder. A sound like salvation. The ceiling exploded. Coalition soldiers poured through the breach, weapons blazing. But they were not Torani. They were Kessi, small gray beings with large eyes, led by Officer Ren. Move, Ren shouted. All survivors move now. The Drevik scattered under the sudden assault. Teeman stood frozen for just a moment, then turned to the survivors. Go now, run. They ran, all 15 of them, racing up the stairs toward safety. And Teeman, finally allowing himself to feel the weight of his wounds, ran with them. Behind them, Ren and the Kessi soldiers held the line. The smallest species in the coalition, inspired by one human to stop running. To start fighting. The bridge of the starward unity was quiet. Outside the great windows, the stars burned cold and eternal. The Drevik swarm had retreated 2 hours ago, their ships disappearing into the dark spaces between systems. They had come expecting easy prey. They had found something else entirely. Commander Velik stood at the main display, staring at the casualty reports. The coalition had lost 43 soldiers in the attack. The Drevik had lost over 100 warriors, and most of those warriors had fallen to a single enemy. One human. The doors behind him opened and Velix turned. High Elder Morath entered the bridge, followed by a group of advisors from a dozen different species. Morath was old, even for a Torani. His blue skin had faded to gray and his movements were slow, but his 4 yellow eyes were still sharp, still full of intelligence. Commander Velix, Morath said. His voice was like distant thunder. I have read your report. I find it difficult to believe. I would not believe it either, Elder, but the sensor logs confirm everything. One human soldier entered the lower decks during the Drevik assault. In 24 minutes, he killed 63 enemy warriors, rescued 15 survivors, and destabilized the swarm's coordination badly enough to enable our counterattack. Morath was silent for a long moment. Where is this human now? The medical bay. His injuries were severe. Take me to him. They walked through the ship, the High Elder and his advisors, Commander Velix and Captain Jiho, Officer Ren, and a growing crowd of curious beings. Word had spread quickly through the vessel. Everyone wanted to see the human who had done the impossible. The medical bay was busy when they arrived. Dr. Hana was treating the last of the survivors, but she stopped when she saw the crowd at the door. Tiemann sat on a bed in the corner. His wounds had been properly treated now, sealed and bandaged by coalition medical technology. But he still looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, pale skin, the face of a man who had pushed himself past every limit and was now paying the price. He stood when he saw the High Elder. Jiho moved to stop him, but Tiemann shook his head. He stood, straight and steady, and faced Morath. For a long moment, the ancient Torani and the young human looked at each other. The silence stretched out. Then Morath spoke. "Sergeant Tiemann of Earth, do you know who I am?" "You are High Elder Morath, leader of the Galactic Coalition Council. I have led this coalition for 90 years. In that time I have seen many warriors, many heroes, many beings who claim to be brave." Morath stepped closer, his massive form towering over the human. "I have never seen anything like you." Tiemann said nothing. "The Drevik are monsters. They have destroyed civilizations. Species that were here before my ancestors were born are gone because of them. The strongest warriors in our coalition fall before them like grass before fire." Morath's voice dropped lower. "And yet you, a single being from a species we considered weak, walked into their midst and made them afraid. How?" Tiemann thought about the question. He thought about the fear he had felt, the pain, the desperation. He thought about the moment when he had decided to walk towards certain death rather than let others die in his place. "I didn't do anything special," he finally said. "I just did what humans do." "And what is that?" "We don't stop." The answer was simple, almost too simple, but Morath understood. He had lived long enough to recognize truth when he heard it. "Commander Velix," Morath said without turning around, "you classified humans as a Class 7 species, the lowest classification, a species of little value." Velix shifted uncomfortably. "That is correct, Elder." "You were wrong." Morath's voice was hard. "You measured muscle and technology and lifespan. You forgot to measure the most important thing, the thing that truly makes a species powerful." "What is that, Elder?" Morath looked back at Tiemann. "Will, the refusal to surrender, the ability to stand up when the body says fall, the strength to walk toward death for the sake of others." He paused. "We have species in this coalition who are stronger than humans, faster, longer-lived, but I do not think we have any who are more dangerous." The crowd stirred. This was unprecedented. The High Elder himself praising a Class 7 species. "I am formally requesting that humanity be reclassified," Morath announced. "Not based on your technology or your physical abilities, but based on what Sergeant Tiemann demonstrated today. Your species has something rare and precious, something the Coalition has forgotten." "What is that?" Jiho asked. "Courage." Morath turned to face the entire crowd. "True courage. Not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. The Drevik will remember this day. They will tell their hive queens about the shadow predator in the human ship. They will warn their young about the species that hunts back." He looked at Tiemann one last time. "You have changed things today, Sergeant. Humanity will never be seen the same way again." Tiemann nodded slowly. He was too tired for more words. Morath and his advisors departed, already discussing the reclassification process. Velix lingered for a moment, looking at Tiemann with an expression that might have been respect or might have been unease. "I mocked your species," Velix said quietly. "I called you weak and worthless. I was a fool." "You weren't wrong about everything," Tiemann replied. "We are soft, we do break easily, we live short lives." "Then how do you do it? How do you fight like that?" Tiemann was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because we have to. Because the universe doesn't care about soft or weak or short-lived. It only cares about who keeps standing." Velix nodded slowly and turned to leave. At the door he paused. If there is ever another war, he said, I want humans fighting beside us, not behind us, beside us. Then he was gone. The crowd dispersed slowly. Soon, only the humans remained in the medical bay. Jiho sat down next to Timan with a heavy sigh. You scared me today, the captain said. I thought I was going to lose you. Sorry. Don't be sorry. You saved 15 lives. You changed how the entire galaxy sees our species. Jiho shook his head in wonder. One sergeant from Earth, that's all it took. Hana brought Timan a cup of water. He took it gratefully and drank deep. You need to rest, she said. Real rest. Your body has been running on fumes for hours. The crash is going to be bad. I know, Timan leaned back against the wall. The exhaustion was hitting him now, wave after wave. I'll rest soon. You'd better, Hana hesitated, then added, what you did down there. I've never seen anything like it. I'm not sure I ever want to again, but I'm glad you were there. I'm glad you're okay, Timan replied, both of you. A soft footstep at the door made them look up. Officer Ren stood there, the small gray Kessie looking nervous. May I enter? Jiho nodded, of course. Ren approached Timan slowly, those large black eyes studying the human with intense curiosity. I watched you on the sensors, Ren said. From the bridge, I saw everything you did. The way you moved, the way you fought, the way you refused to stop even when your body was failing. The Kessie paused. I have a question. Ask. Do all humans fight like you? Timan thought about his family back on Earth. His mother, who had worked 2 jobs to keep him fed. His father, who had never stopped smiling even through the hardest times. His little sister, who had chased away the bigger kids who tried to bully him when he was small. He thought about the soldiers he had served with, the doctors, the teachers, the farmers, the ordinary people who did extraordinary things every day without anyone noticing. He smiled slightly, the first real smile since the attack had begun. No, he said, some of us are actually dangerous. Ren stared at him for a long moment. Then the Kessie made a sound that might have been a laugh, or might have been a sob of disbelief. Your species is terrifying, Ren said. Thank you, Timan replied, I think. He closed his eyes then, letting the exhaustion finally take him. Around him, his friends kept watch, and far away in the darkness between stars, the Drevik swarm spread the word. There was a new predator in the galaxy. Small, soft, absolutely unbreakable. They called themselves humans, and the universe would never underestimate them again.